What is going on, guys? RollieRodz here. 10.0.7 is finally being released on March 21st. Along with that, the Retribution Paladin Rework. Let's talk about it. All right, let's get into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top, go left to right on the Paladin Tree, and then start at the top, go left to right on the Retribution Tree. So coming up first, we have Lay on Hands. Heals a friendly target for an amount equal to 100% of your maximum health. Cannot be used on a target with Forbearance. Causes Forbearance for 30 seconds. It's the same Lay on Hands that we've had before. You know it, you love it. It's gotten you out of so many bad spots. It is an instant pickup for me. Blessing of Freedom blesses a party or raid member, granting immunity to movement impairing effects for 8 seconds. In 10.0, we had to spend a talent to get Blessing of Freedom. One change with the rework is now we have it kind of baseline on our talent tree. Hammer of Wrath, hurl a divine hammer that strikes an enemy for 16,720 holy damage, only usable on enemies that have less than 20% health or during Avenging Wrath. It's the same Hammer Wrath that we've had for a very long time. It's given to us, free talent. Cleanse Toxins cleanses a friendly target, removing poison and disease effects. One change is Cleanse Toxins used to be down here. You used to have to take either Repentance or Blinding Light to get to Cleanse Toxins. Now you just get it right, coming right out of Lay on Hands. Which is great. Brackenhide Hollow is going to be a dungeon in Season 2, and you're gonna love this talent. Auras of the Resolute, giving us Consecration Aura, which is interrupt and silence effect on party and raid members within 40 yards are 30% shorter, and Devo Aura, which is party and raid members within 40 yards are bolstered by their devotion, reducing damage taken by 3%. It's the same Consecration and Devo Aura that we've always had in the past. There it is. Obduracy, speed and avoidance increased by 2%. This is the same Obduracy that we had in 10.0, but now it is right up here, right off the bat. Auras of Swift Vengeance, this is a big one. Retribution Aura. When any party or raid member within 40 yards takes more than 30% of their health in damage in a single hit, each member gains 5% increased damage and healing, decaying over 30 seconds. This cannot occur within 30 seconds of the aura being applied. So there's going to be no aura swapping. You can't run Devotion Aura and then swap over to Retribution Aura, because once you swap over to Retribution Aura, it doesn't actually take effect until 30 seconds later. And so let's say you get the hit and everybody gets their 5% increased damage, and then you swap over to another aura. You would have to anticipate it by swapping more than 30 seconds before the next person gets a hit for that, and it's just not going to be a thing. You also get access to Crusader Aura, increases mount speed by 20% for all party and raid members within 40 yards. Turn Evil is back. The power of the light compels an undead, aberration, or demon target to flee up to 40 seconds. Damage may break this effect. Lesser creatures have a chance to be destroyed. Only one target can be turned at a time. Turn Evil used to be like somewhere down here in the middle-ish of our tree. Now it's right up at the top. You can get it not having to take any weird paths or anything like that. Fist of Justice. Each holy power spent reduces the remaining cooldown of Hammer of Justice by 1 second. I love Fist of Justice. In M+, it is a godsend. 2 points, 2 seconds off every time you Divine Storm or Templar's Verdict. Love it. Divine Steed. Leap atop your charger for 4 seconds, increasing movement speed by 100%, usable while indoors or in combat. It says 6 seconds because baseline it's 4 seconds, and then if you take Seasoned Warhorse, it gives you an additional 2 seconds up to 6 seconds. There's a weird thing on PTR where it's like if you already have it selected, even if you unselect a talent, you still technically have that talent, and they don't let you make changes to anything until you have all your talents. So it says 6 seconds because that is the increased with Seasoned Warhorse version. Greater Judgment. Judgment causes the target to take 20% increased damage from your next holy power ability. A staple of Paladin play, Greater Judgment. It's our Judgment debuff. If you're a Retribution Paladin, your take. Our first choice node, which is actually an old choice node, which is Repentance, which forces an enemy target to meditate, incapacitating them for 60 seconds. Usable against humanoids, demons, undead, dragonkin, and giants. And the other choice that you have is Blinding Light. Emits dazzling light in all directions, blinding enemies within 10 yards, causing them to wander disoriented for 6 seconds. Non-holy damage will break the disorient effect. Blinding Light is great in M+. Some Sometimes you have those mobs that have uninterruptible cast, but they can be stunned or dazed in this case. So it just gives you another thing in your toolkit to stop cast. Cavalier Divine Steed now has 2 charges, same as 10.0. You get 2 charges of Steed. It's great. We already talked about Seasoned Warhorse. And Rebuke interrupts spell casting and prevents any spell in that school from being cast for 4 seconds. Now it does say 8 yards. That is with another talent, but baseline it's melee, which is 5 yards. I learned that. Holy Aegis, armor and critical strike chance increased by 2%, and it is a 2-point node, so you can get up to 4%. Pretty solid choice. Avenging Wrath. Call upon the light and become an avatar of Retribution, increasing your damage and healing done by 20% for 20 seconds, and allowing Hammer of Wrath to be cast on any target. Combines with other Avenging Wrath abilities, granting all known Avenging Wrath effects while active. Can't go on a crusade without your wings. It's our big cooldown. If you're not taking this, take it. Take it, please take it. Justification. Judgment damage is increased by 10%. Solid talent. 10% more damage to Judgment. Now, keep in mind, this does affect Divine Toll. Divine Toll is 100% of your Judgment's damage, so anything that buffs your Judgment damage is also going to buff Divine Toll as well. Punishment. Successfully interrupting an enemy with Rebuke casts an extra Crusader Strike. I love the idea of this talent. Unfortunately, we have so many choices that I don't really know if this will take play. Maybe in PvP where you're interrupting a lot more than normal. Even in M+, when you should be interrupting as much as you can, I don't see a whole lot of value in it when you could be taking other things that will help your team a lot more. But I love the idea of this talent. If somehow this was baseline, that would just be fantastic. Golden Path. Consecration heals you and 5 allies within it for 477 every 0.7 seconds. The same Golden Path that we've had before in the past. As a Retribution Paladin, you probably won't be taking this, at least not in PvE. Blessing of Sacrifice. Blesses a party or raid member, reducing their damage taken by 30%, but you suffer 100% of the damage prevented. Lasts 12 seconds or until transfer damage would cause you to fall below 20% health. Blessing of Sacrifice is a great tool. I've used it a lot in M+, sometimes even in raid. Never underestimate bubble sacking or Shield of Vengeance sacking somebody for a little extra damage. Sanctified Plates. Armor increased by 10%, stamina increased by 5%, and damage taken from area of effects attacks reduced by 5%. It is a 2-choice node. Sanctified Plates is a answered prayer for paladins. 2 points into this thing, you get 20% increased armor, 10% increased stamina, and 10% reduced damage from area of effects. Now keep in mind, that is not avoidance, it's just a straight 10% reduced damage from area of effects. I love Sanctified Plates. I'm so happy we're finally gonna live things as paladins. Blessing of Protection. Blesses a party or raid member, granting immunity to physical damage and harmful effects for 10 seconds. Cannot be used on a target with Forbearance. Causes Forbearance for 30 seconds. It's the same Blessing of Protection that we've had for so long. Unfortunately, we didn't get Spell Warding. I'm still a little sad about it. It just didn't make the cut, but it is what it is. Unbound Freedom. This is a big one. Blessing of Freedom increases movement speed by 30%, and you gain Blessing of Freedom when cast on a friendly target. This is great. Blessing of Freedom is on a 25-second cooldown. Now, when you cast it on somebody, you also get it. So they get a movement speed buff, you get a movement speed buff. You could use it just on yourself, just for the movement speed buff, and not even need the unroot. It's a great talent. It's going to be super helpful in almost all form of content. Light Forge Blessing. Divine Storm heals you and up to 4 nearby allies for 3% of your maximum health. This is one of my favorite spells that they put in on the rework. It's going to be great in M+. It's going to be great in Cleave raid fights. With the buffs to our stamina, this should heal a decent amount. If you're looking for somewhere to just throw a talent, this would be a great place to throw it. Seal of Mercy. Golden Path strikes the lowest health ally within it an additional time for 100% of its effect. Again, this ties in with Golden Path. it's really more of a holy thing, not really for ret. After image, after you spend 20 holy power, your next word of glory echoes to a nearby ally at 30% effectiveness. It's the same after image it was in 10.0. It's still here, but now it is a choice node. So now we have healing hands. The cooldown of lay on hands is reduced by 60% based on the target's missing health. Word of glory healing is increased by up to 100% based on the target's missing health. I absolutely love healing hands. You've probably heard me say it before. I love helping out my team. I love being useful as a paladin, and healing hands is one of those big word of glory heals come in so clutch in M+ and in raid. Another great place to throw a talent point if you're kind of just looking for somewhere to throw it. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be playing it too much because of all the other things that they've added, but man, I love this talent so much. Next choice node that modifies our Blessing of Sacrifice. Sacrifice of the Just reduces the cooldown of Blessing of Sacrifice by 60 seconds. So Blessing of Sacrifice is a 2-minute cooldown. If you take Sacrifice of the Just, it becomes a 1-minute cooldown. This is really more so for Holy, where they need to have their DR for their tank or their DPS or something like that. If anything, we're actually going to take Recompense, which is after your Blessing of Sacrifice ends, 50% of the total damage it diverted is added to your next Judgment as bonus damage, or your next Word of Glory as bonus healing. This effect's bonus damage cannot exceed 30% of your maximum health, and its bonus healing cannot exceed 100% of your maximum health. If you drop your Blessing of Sacrifice on a target, however much damage that they take, it buffs your next Judgment. It used to be able to take it. Now with all the additions, I'm not sure we'll have the room to take it, but that's totally up to you. Unbreakable Spirit reduces the cooldown of your Divine Shield, Shield of Vengeance, Divine Protection, and Lay on Hands by 30%. Fantastic talent. I love that it's right in the middle and it opens up these 3 lanes. So just by taking this one talent, you can effectively almost ignore everything else in the row, and you can still get to your keystones. Improved Blessing of Protection reduces the cooldown of Blessing of Protection by 60 seconds. So 5-minute cooldown now becomes a 4-minute cooldown. Crusader's Reprieve, increasing the range of your Crusader Strike, Rebuke, and auto attacks by 3 yards. Using Crusader Strike heals you for 2% of your maximum health. This was one of Blizzard's ways to address our mobility, giving us a little bit more range so we can back off the boss. It was only really noticeable to me on one of the bosses in raid testing. As far as like just right away taking this, I would say it's a good default choice, and I probably will run it. The heal is obviously really nice for Crusader Strike, and that'll help with survivability. As far as the range, we'll have to wait and see if it really is going to be as successful as Blizzard hopes. Strength of Conviction. While in your consecration, your Shield of the Righteous and Word of Glory have 10% increased damage and healing. As Ret, you can use Shield of the Righteous. However, you don't run a shield, so we don't need to worry about this talent. Judgment of Light. Judgment causes the next 5 successful attacks against the target to heal the attacker for 1,701 health. Judgment of Light, it's a great choice. But again, with the amount of choices we have now, we probably will not run Judgment of Light. Seal of Might, Mastery increased by 2% and Strength increased by 2%. It's a 2-choice node, so you get 4% Mastery and 4% Strength. Divine Purpose, Holy Power abilities have a 10% chance to make your next Holy Power ability free and deal 10% increased damage and healing. This one was recently nerfed, and it really hurt my heart because I love Divine Purpose. Nothing feels better than getting a Divine Purpose proc in the middle of your Final Reckoning or Executioner Ascendance window. It's great. I'm really sad to see that it was nerfed. For me, I think the only time I would really run this talent is going to be in M+, where the Keystone talent at the end is really more for single target. I'm sad about the Divine Purpose nerf. Seal of Alacrity, Haste increased by 2% and Judgment cooldown reduced by 5.5 seconds. It is a 2-point node, so you can get 4% haste and 1% reduced Judgment. A very solid talent. Our 2-point node, Incandescence. Each holy power you spend has a 5% chance to cause your consecration to flare up, dealing 3,644 holy damage to up to 5 enemies standing within it. And then Touch of Light, your spells and abilities have a chance to cause your target to erupt in a blinding light, dealing 3,306 holy damage or healing an ally for 4,293 health. Neither of these to me is really worth it when we have so many other better options. At the end of the day, Touch of Light just isn't proccing enough to make it viable. If anything, maybe Incandescence, but they recently nerfed Consecration, so I really don't think either of these talents are super worth. We get a new talent, Faith's Armor. Word of Glory grants 20% bonus armor for 4.5 seconds. Solid one, but again, we just have so many choices now that I'm not really sure if Faith's Armor is going to get used in normal PvE. Maybe PvP, I'm not 100% sure, but as far as PvE goes, there's kind of a lot of options that we would rather run. Of Dawn and Dusk has been reworked. When you cast 3 holy power generating abilities, you gain Blessing of Dawn. When you consume Blessing of Dawn, you gain Blessing of Dusk. So it's not any longer build up to 5, spend all of your holy power. Now it's just use 3 holy power generating abilities. They can be the same ability, so you can hit Crusader Strike twice and hit 1 Judgment, and you would still get the Blessing of Dawn. Blessing of Dawn is your next holy power spending ability, deals 10% additional increased damage and healing. And Blessing of Dusk, damage taken reduced by 5%. Now these do have the modifiers, like I said earlier. We have Seal of Order, which Blessing of Dawn increases the damage and healing of your next holy power spending ability an additional 10%. That's why you saw 20% here. So it's 10% baseline. You can get another 10%. And then Blessing of Dusk increases your armor by 10% and your holy power generating abilities to cool down 10% faster. And then you have Fading Light. Now, one thing to note is the Blessing of Dawn is the same on Seal of Order and Fading Light. What it is it's changing the Blessing of Dusk side of it. Fading Light, Blessing of Dusk causes your holy power generating abilities to also grant an absorb shield for 10% of the damage or healing dealt, which is what you'll see here on Blessing of Dusk. So really, do you want your holy power generating abilities to cool down 10% faster, or do you want an absorb shield? You can go either one of these. I suggest you take one or the other. You can't really go wrong. I think most people will probably take the absorb shield, but 10% faster cooldown. Divine Toll is now on the Paladin Tree. Instantly cast Judgment on up to 5 targets within 30 yards. After casting Divine Toll, you instantly cast Judgment every 5 seconds. This effect lasts 15 seconds. Divine Toll's Judgments deal 100% increased damage. So remember we talked about justification, so 10% increased damage is added to our base Judgment damage, and then Divine Toll does 100% of that damage. Divine Toll is one of my favorite abilities that they've added to the game. I love it. And continuing down, Divine Resonance. After casting Divine Toll, you instantly cast Judgment every 5 seconds for 15 seconds. The same Divine Resonance that we had in 10.0 and even within Shadowlands. But we also now get access to Quickened Invocation, which is Divine Toll's cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds. Me, personally, I'm going to run Divine Resonance. The extra Judgments, especially with some other talents over here, to me, Divine Resonance is just going to be the go-to for Red Paladin. Moving on, Seal of the Crusader. Your auto attacks deal 506 additional damage. It is a 2-point node, so you can take both of these to deal 1,012 additional holy damage. And the last one that we have is Vengeful Wrath. Hammer of Wrath always critically strikes. This is going to be an interesting ability to keep your eye on. Our tier set coming up in 10.1 is going to involve Hammer of Wrath, and there are also some Hammer of Wrath abilities within the Ret tree that will interact with it in an interesting way. All right, now it's time for the good stuff. Blade of Justice. Pierce enemies with a Blade of Light, dealing 10,572 holy damage. It's the same Blade of Justice we've had ever since Legion. Divine Storm. Unleash a Whirl of Divine Energy, dealing 12,181 radiant damage to all nearby enemies. Deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. The same Divine Storm we've had forever. Here we get a choice node between Swift Justice, which is reduce the cooldown of Judgment by 2 seconds and Crusader Strike by 2 seconds. Then we also have Light of Justice, which reduces the cooldown of Blade of Justice by 2 seconds. One of the things that they did with the rework that I really enjoy is that they've kind of let you pick which spells you like and gave you choices to make that spell stronger or do cool things. This is just one of them. Whichever one you like to hit more, we're going to give you reduced cooldown on it. If you like hitting Judgment and Crusader Strike, Swift Justice is for you. If you're a Blade of Justice boy, Light of Justice is for you. Expurgation. Expurgation has been reworked. Your Blade of Justice causes the target to burn 10,282 of the damage dealt as radiant damage over 6 seconds. In the past, Expurgation was if you crit, they get a burn. If you get a crit, they burn for extra damage. Now, anytime you hit Blade of Justice, you get expurgation. One thing to note is radiant damage is fire and holy damage together. Judgment of Justice. Judgment deals 10% increased damage and increases your movement speed by 10%. If you have greater Judgment, Judgment slows enemies by 30% for 8 seconds. So it's not quite the Judgment speed buff that a lot of people are asking, but it's something, and for how often we hit Judgment, it's a good solid talent. And so you'll basically just have 10% increased movement speed and you'll be slowing enemies passively. It's pretty solid. Our next choice node is Improved Blade of Justice. Blade of Justice now has 2 charges, or Holy Blade. Blade of Justice generates 1 additional holy power. I like it because it's kind of choose how you want the spell to react. Do you want it to have a burn effect? Do you want to have 2 charges of it? Do you want it to generate an additional holy power? It's kind of up to you. Another really interesting choice node between Final Verdict and Justicar's Vengeance. Unleash a powerful weapon strike that deals 25,332 holy damage to a target. Final Verdict has a 15% chance to reset the cooldown of Hammer of Wrath and makes it usable on any target regardless of their health. And then Justicar's Vengeance. Focus holy energy to deliver a powerful weapon strike that deals 23,559 holy damage and restores 6% of your maximum health. Damage is increased by 25% when used against a stunned target. I actually really like the choice node here. It was always really weird that like you could pick Justicar's Vengeance, but then Final Verdict was also a choice down somewhere later. I think choosing between the two is a smart move, and they've gotten rid of the 5 holy power requirement for Justicar's Vengeance. So now you choose, do I want to do some damage and have a chance to do a little bit more damage with my Hammer of Wrath, or do I do a little less damage and heal myself? I think it's actually a really solid choice node. Light Celerity. Flash of Light casts instantly. Its healing done is increased by 50%, but it now has a 6-second cooldown. And the choice node is Guided Prayer. When your health is brought below 25%, you instantly cast a free Word of Glory at 100% effectiveness on yourself. Cannot occur more than once every 60 seconds. I like Light Celerity. I think it's a really cool take on like what you could do with Flash of Light. If I am casting Flash of Light, I'm typically spamming it. I know you'll get 50% more and it'll be an instant cast. Typically when I use Flash of Light, there's a lot of damage going out. I'm just trying to spam it on as many people as possible, or we've just finished killing a pack in M+ and everybody has bursting stacks, and so you're spamming it like crazy because there's nothing to hit to get any Word of Glories going on. But I really like that they give you this choice. It kind of reminds me of Selfless Healer, where it kind of builds up and then you get an instant cast of the heal. Now they kind of just give it to you right off the bat, which is great. For Guided Prayer, I'll probably run Guided Prayer just because I don't have to think about it. It just instantly casts on it. If you're like me, when you get low on health, generally you're reaching for the Lay on Hands button anyway. So now with Guided Prayer, we get a nice little heal, and then if we need more, we can Lay on Hands or pop a defensive or whatever. Righteous Cause, Templar's Verdict, Final Verdict, and Justicar's Vengeance have a 20% chance to reset the cooldown of Blade of Justice. And then Art of War, your auto attacks have a 20% chance to reset the cooldown of Blade of Justice. It's a really cool take on, it's like a different Art of War, like a different version of Art of War, where it's like, okay, your single targets have a chance to reset, or your auto attacks have a chance to reset. I'm probably still going to play Art of War even in single target, just because you're probably going to auto attack more times than you are going to single target 3 holy power spender your target. So I'm probably going to run Art of War. Jurisdiction, Justicar's Vengeance and Blade of Justice deals 10% increased damage. The range of Blade of Justice is increased by 20 yards. Solid choice. Just if you're running Final Verdict, it changes to Final Verdict. I just have Justicar's Vengeance selected right now, but whichever one you choose, it does 10% increased damage and 10% increased damage to your Blade of Justice, and it makes your Blade of Justice hit a little bit further. It's a solid talent. Inquisitor's Ire. Every 2 seconds, gain 5% increased damage to your next Divine Storm, stacking up to 10 times. And then Tempest of the Lightbringer, Divine Storm projects an additional wave of light, striking all enemies up to 20 yards in front of you for 20% of Divine Storm's damage. The same Tempest of the Lightbringer that we know and love. Inquisitor's Ire is interesting to me. It pairs really well with Imperium Power. If you're not taking Imperium Power, I don't see Inquisitor's Ire really being of any use. If I'm going to take anything here, it's probably going to just be Tempest of the Lightbringer. This is really more so a single target talent, and I'm not really sure if we would actually take it when we have so many other options. Shield of Vengeance, create a barrier of holy light that absorbs 131,701 damage for 15 seconds. When the shield expires, it bursts to inflict holy damage equal to the total amount absorbed divided among all enemies. It's the same Shield of Vengeance we know and love. It was buffed in 10.0.5, which is great. The fact that we get an additional defensive is absolutely fantastic. Vanguard's Momentum. Hammer of Wrath has 1 extra charge, and on enemies below 20% health generates 1 additional holy power. And we have Sanctify. Enemies hit by Divine Storm take 20% more damage from Consecration and Divine Hammers for 12 seconds. Vanguard's Momentum could possibly be a play in 10.1 when we have our tier set. I'll make a video on that when 10.1 drops, but for right now, I don't really see us taking Vanguard's Momentum. If we took anything here, it would be Sanctify, but even then, with the huge nerf to Sanctify, Consecration was just recently nerfed. I'm not sure if we'll be running either of these talents. Again, if anything, I would probably say Sanctify. Zealot's Fervor, auto attack speed increased by 20%. If you're running Art of War, you're really like Blade of Justice, you're probably gonna like Zealot's Fervor. It's just a pretty straightforward talent. We have another choice node, Consecrated Ground. Your consecration is 15% larger, and enemies within it have 50% reduced movement speed. Your Divine Hammer is 25% larger, and enemies within them have 30% reduced movement speed. So if you need a slow, if it's Spiteful Weak, and you're dropping consecration left and right, this is your talent. A new talent, Rush of Light. The critical strike chance of your damaging single target holy power abilities grants you 5% haste for 10 seconds. It's a talent. I'm not really sure if we would really want to run this. I think it's a play on Relentless Inquisitor, except not as good, which Relentless Inquisitor itself was kind of just decent. I'm not really sure if we'd run this. If anything, because you don't want Zealous Fervor or here, you would probably take Rush of Light just to get down to somewhere over here. Another cool choice node, Improved Judgment. Judgment now has 2 charges, or Boundless Judgment. Judgment generates 1 additional holy power. So again, if you really like Judgment and you wish you could hit it even more, now you can. Or let's say you're running Improved Blade of Justice where you have 2 charges and you're missing that holy power generator that generates 2 holy power. Now you can take Boundless Judgment. I would probably run Improved Judgment just because with some of the other changes that they've made, and especially with High Lord's Judgment, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, you're going to want to be hitting Judgment a lot more because of the greater Judgment debuff that you have. So for me, Improved Judgment is kind of the default, but I could see some situations where you would want Boundless Judgment. Crusading Strikes. Crusader Strike replaces your auto attacks and deals 5,778 physical damage, but now only generate 1 holy power every 2 attacks. Inherits Crusader Strike benefits, but cannot benefit from Wind Fury. Crusading Strikes, I know it used to generate holy power every attack, and now it's every other. A lot of people think that, oh, because now it's every other, it's not worth it. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think there is a possibility that Crusading Strikes could be good. And like I said before, with the rework, there's so much flexibility with how you want to generate holy power. What do you want to generate holy power with mostly? And Crusading Strikes is one of those options. Templar Strikes. Crusader Strike becomes a 2-part combo. Templar Strike slashes an enemy for 10,723 radiant damage. You have 4 seconds to continue the combo. Templar Slash strikes an enemy for 13,185 radiant damage and is a 100% increased chance to critically strike. Inherits Crusader Strike benefits. So Templar Strike is kind of your first part. Then from there, you have 4 seconds to hit Crusader Strike again, which would be Templar, which turns into Templar Slash, and it'll deal 13,185 radiant damage, and it is 100% gonna crit every time. It's really interesting, and I think if you were min-maxing perfectly, Templar Strikes would do huge amounts of damage. However, I do think that once you're actually in a key or in a raid and stuff like that, and things like that, and things are happening, mechanics are happening, I do think it becomes harder to maintain that you'll be hitting every Templar Slash. So I think the potential ceiling of Templar Strikes is very high. I think in reality, you may not get the full benefit being able to hit every second part of the combo, which is the more powerful side of the combo. Up next, we have Divine Wrath, which increases the duration of Avenging Wrath or Crusade by 3 seconds. This was a little bit of a weird one. 3 seconds at the end of the day isn't a whole lot. It's maybe one more Final Verdict or Divine Storm. I personally don't see Divine Wrath probably being used too much unless you're not going to take either one of these or either one of these, and you need to get down to your Avenging Wrath modifier. That would be the only way, and I guess it's a nice default, but I think generally you're going to take one of these or one of these before you take Divine Wrath. Consecrated Blade is back, but it's been reworked. Blade of Justice casts Consecration at the target's location. This effect can only occur every 10 seconds. It is a guarantee now. You don't have to wait for an Art of War proc or anything like that. It just has a cooldown. Consecrated Blade is a great way to just remove a button. You don't have to worry about consecration. You don't have to worry about hitting another button. If you want the least amount of buttons, Consecrated Blade is one that you're definitely going to want to click. That being said, Divine Hammer is a really cool ability. Divine Hammers spin around you, damaging enemies within 8 yards for 13,704 radiant damage over 12 seconds. Deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. It is such a cool ability, and I love Divine Hammer so much. If I wasn't such a min-maxy player, I would probably run it. I really wish that they would buff it, and it would be super worth to take. I think if you're going for full-on Paladin fantasy, run Divine Hammer, man. It's such a cool ability. And we get to another choice node, Blade of Vengeance. Blade of Justice now hits nearby enemies for 10,572 holy damage, deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. So now your Blade of Vengeance does AoE. You can kind of play how you want to play, and now your Blade of Vengeance is doing cleave damage. It's a great, I think it's a really fun ability. If you're a Blade of Justice boy, run this one. Imperium Legacy. Judgment empowers your next single target holy power ability to automatically activate Divine Storm with 25% effectiveness. I think effectively what they did here was they let you go an AoE or single target, because Imperium Legacy at the end of the day is a single target ability. Now again, if you're going to run Imperium Legacy, you're going to want to run Inquisitor's Ire. I think these two were made to be run with each other. It takes 20 seconds for you to get maximum stacks of Inquisitor's Ire, and it takes 20 seconds every time you use Imperium Legacy. The only thing is, as long as you have Inquisitor's Ire stacks maxed at 10, when you cast that Judgment and then you use your Final Reckoning or Justicar's Vengeance or whatever, Imperium Legacy is also going to trigger, which does consume Inquisitor's Ire. So if you want Imperium Legacy, you're going to want Inquisitor's Ire as well. Vanguards of Justice. Your damaging holy power abilities cost 1 additional holy power and deal 20% increased damage. This one has seen a lot of, I don't want to say controversy, but a lot of people are talking about Vanguards of Justice. Is it worth it for the 1 extra holy power to do 20% increased damage? In raid testing yesterday, it did seem so. Now, that was at 25%. It got nerfed, and it's now 20%. So I don't have any testing on this. We'll have to see what the sims say, if it's worth it or not. But right now, I would say it's at least worth a look. Heart of the Crusader. Crusader Strike and auto attacks deal 10% increased damage and deal 10% increased critical strike damage. This, when you think about it, 10% increased damage and 10% increased critical strike damage. When you have something like Templar Strikes, where your slash is going to always crit, you're increasing the base damage by 10%, and now you're increasing the crit damage side of it by 10%. These two kind of run hand in hand. Sure, you don't need to run Heart of the Crusader. You're just doing less damage with Templar Slash if you're not running Heart of the Crusader. I think if you're gonna run one, you should run the other. Otherwise, you're just missing out on damage. High Lord's Judgment. I love this talent. Judgment's duration is increased by 3 seconds. If you have Greater Judgment, targets take 20% increased damage from your next 2 Holy Power abilities, and it is a 2-point node. So you can take it, and now your Judgment's duration is increased by 6 seconds. If you have Greater Judgment, targets take 20% increased damage from your next 3 Holy Power abilities. I love this ability, especially if we're going to be running something like Vanguards of Justice, where it's going to take us longer to get up to 4 Holy Power. Now our Judgment debuff duration is increased, and we can hit multiple times before we have to hit Judgment again. So you can take something like Boundless Judgment, where it's generating 1 additional Holy Power. Because the increased duration and because it's the next 3 Holy Power abilities, maybe you don't have to hit Judgment as often. So when you do hit Judgment, you want it to generate an additional Holy Power, because you need the additional Holy Power from Vanguard's Justice. Now you're not hitting Judgment as often, and you can kind of see where I'm going with this. I love this ability. I'm glad that they added this. I think it's a solid one, even if you just run it at rank 1. I think it's worth. Our Avenging Wrath choice node. So we still have Avenging Wrath Might, which increases our critical strike chance during wings by 20%. Or you can take Crusade, is the same it's been. Call upon the light and begin a crusade, increasing your haste by 3% for 25 seconds. Each Holy Power spent during Crusade increases haste by additional 3%, maximum 10 stacks. If Avenging Wrath is known, also grants 3% damage per stack. Now, one thing to note, Avenging Wrath Might is a 1-minute cooldown. So we effectively have 1-minute wings, or you can take 2-minute wings, and you can take Crusade, which will also basically give you your own lust, and it gives you extra damage. I think the consensus is that Avenging Wrath Might is the play, because 1-minute wings just feels really good. Now we don't have as many cooldowns, so now we want to be hitting wings as often as we can. We don't have Seraphim, we don't have Ashes to Ashes, anything like that. So now getting more wings is a big deal. So I think Avenging Wrath Might is the play, but you know I love Crusade. Blessed Champion, Crusader Strike and Judgment hit an additional 2 targets, deal 50% reduced damage to secondary targets. It is a 2-point node, so it can go up to 4 targets. So you're now effectively hitting 5 targets at once with Judgment and Crusader Strike. This tied in with High Lord's Judgment is fantastic, because now our Judgment debuff is now being spread to all of these targets. And the thing is, with High Lord's Judgment, it could be 2 Holy Power abilities, or we could do 3. So now we do 1 Judgment, everybody gets a Judgment debuff, and then we have time to build up and hit Divine Storm 3 times before we have to hit Judgment again. One thing to note is this does work with Divine Resonance, so you're pretty much going to be wasting your Judgment debuff. During Divine Resonance, it is what it is. It's a great talent. We have another choice node, Imperium Power. Crusader Strike has a 15% chance to make your next Divine Storm free and deal 15% additional damage. And a new talent, Judge, Jury, and Executioner, increases the critical strike chance of Judgment by 10%. Either of these are solid. Again, more crit chance is always nice, especially if you take Judgment of Justice, where you're doing 10% increased damage, and then your Judgment is being spread to 4 additional targets. If it crits, now all of those are critting. It's a solid talent. It's not bad. Imperium Power, Crusader Strike having a 15% chance now. 15% is right on the line. I don't know if I would really be running this in M+. I'm not completely sold on this version of Imperium Power, especially with a lot of the changes. We have so many talents that we need to spend points on. I'm not 100% sure if this is worth. Adjudication, critical strike damage of your abilities increased by 5%, and Hammer of Wrath critical strike causes a blessed hammer, yes, like Prot, to spiral around outward, dealing 1,914 Holy Strike damage to enemies. Now, the Blessed Hammer part of it, I don't think it's worth it. The Blessed Hammer part, if they took that out, it would be whatever. The real value here is the critical strike damage of your abilities increased by 5%. So crit damage is increased by 5%. Remember, if you already took Heart of the Crusader, which deals 10% increased critical strike damage to Crusader Strike, this is doing an additional 5% on top of it. And if you're running Hammer of Wrath, which always critically strikes, it will do an additional 5% damage on top of that, along with the Blessed Hammer, which is 1,914 holy strike damage. So it's an interesting talent. It may be worth it again, and if you have a lot of crit, it may be well worth it, because now all of your crits are doing 5% more damage on top of it. So anytime you can get 5% more damage, generally probably a good thing. Aegis of Protection. Divine Protection reduces damage you take by an additional 10%, and Shield of Vengeance absorbs 20% more damage. First of all, you need to take this talent to get into Final Reckoning, Execution Sentence, and Wake of Ashes, but it's just really good talent. Now Divine Purpose reduces damage by 30%. Shield of Vengeance now absorbs for 131k absorb shield on you. Fantastic. I said this one wrong last time. Penitence, I'm pretty sure. I'm really bad at reading and words and stuff. But your damage over time effects deal 10% more damage. So this is Expurgation, Divine Hammers, Consecration. One that I didn't really know this until I read patch notes was also increases the damage of Executioner Sentence. So if you're taking Expurgation, if you want Consecration to hit harder, take Penitence. New talent, Blades of Light, Crusader Strike, Judgment, Hammer of Wrath, and your damaging single target holy power abilities deal holy strike damage. Now, holy strike damage is physical and holy. So Ret has a chance to change its damage profile of physical and holy, and also fire and holy damage. So Blade of Light is just making Crusader, Judgment, Hammer of Wrath deal holy strike damage. A choice node that I think should have been a choice node from a very long time ago. Final Reckoning versus Execution Sentence. Final Reckoning call down a blast of heavenly energy, dealing 37,081 holy damage to all targets in the target area, and causing them to take 30% increased damage from your holy power abilities for 10 seconds. So it's the Final Reckoning that we have known for a really long time. It was nerfed down to 30%. It used to be 50%. And the upfront damage of it was also nerfed slightly. But that opens the door for Executioner Sentence. A hammer slowly falls from the sky upon the target for after 8 seconds. They suffer 36,951 holy damage, plus 20% of damage taken from your abilities in that time. And Executioner Sentence is now on a 30-second cooldown and does not cost holy power. So in a single target situation, Executioner Sentence in raid testing for me was doing a lot more damage than Final Reckoning. Just purely based on the fact that you have it every 30 seconds, it's doing a lot more damage, you don't have to pay holy power for it. I think we're going to be running Executioner Sentence for single target and Final Reckoning for AoE. And while we're talking about these two, I'll talk about the other two modification talents. Executioner's Will, Final Reckoning, and Execution Sentence duration are increased by 4 seconds. And Divine Auxiliary, Final Reckoning, and Execution Sentence grant 3 holy power. I don't think Divine Auxiliary is really worth it. The only time it would ever be really useful is right at the beginning of a boss pool where you're immediately lusting and you don't want to spend time generating 3 holy power, but shouldn't really take that long anyway. You want to get your judgment debuff rolling before you do anything anyways. So I don't know if this is really worth it, especially when you could be taking other talents that affect more than just this 30 seconds. Executioner's Will, though, it may be worth it, because now you're looking at a 14-second long Final Reckoning or a 12-second Executioner Sentence. I think Executioner's Will potentially be worth it, because that's one more Divine Storm or, Templar's Verdict. 4 seconds within Executioner Sentence is quite a lot, because it's all of your abilities doing 20% more damage. Wake of Ashes, lash out on an enemy, dealing 41,248 radiant damage to all enemies within 14 yards in front of you, reducing their movement speed by 50%. Demon and undead enemies are also stunned by 5 seconds. So it's the Wake of Ashes we know and love. It is on a 30-second cooldown. Remember, Ashes to Ashes is gone, so Wake of Ashes will not have a reset anymore. You're gonna have to wait 30 seconds, so you're gonna have to think about when you use it, because you want to have it for your wings. And we'll talk about these abilities right here. Seething Flame, Wake of Ashes deals significantly reduced damage to secondary targets, but now causes you to lash out 2 extra times for 22,934 radiant damage. It's a really cool effect. I showed it in one of my other videos, but I really enjoy Seething Flames. I think it's such a fun looking ability. And Truth's Wake. Wake of Ashes also causes the target to burn for an additional 29,562 radiant damage over 9 seconds. So it's the Truth's Wake that we know and love. Burning Crusade, Divine Storm, Divine Hammer, and Consecration now deal radiant damage, and your abilities that deal radiant damage deal 5% increased damage. Burning Crusade is great. When you hear people talk about the fire build or the radiant build, they're talking about Burning Crusade. Divine Arbiter. Abilities that deal Holy Strike damage deal 5% increased damage, and casting abilities that deal Holy Strike damage grants you a stack of Divine Arbiter. At 25 stacks, your next damaging single target Holy Power ability causes 48,158 Holy Strike damage to your primary target and 9,631 Holy Strike damage to enemies within 6 yards. I don't know if Divine Arbiter is worth it. I would have to say, if anything, it's worth it in single target, because the 9,634 Holy Strike damage to enemies within 6 yards, it's not a whole lot, and you would have to be using a single target ability to do 48k to the single target, and then you're only doing, you know, less than 10k to everybody else. It's not really worth. I don't think it's worth it in AoE or M+, but for single target, I think it'll work well. And the last one, Searing Light. Your abilities that deal radiant damage have a chance to call down an explosion of holy fire, dealing 24,271 radiant damage to all enemies and leaving a consecration in its wake. Deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. Searing Light, the proc rate seems really low, but the damage is really good. And with the addition of Templar Strikes, with the addition of Burning Crusade, Seething Flames can actually proc this. Like the second or third of your Wake of Ashes can proc this. I have tested it. The proc rate on Searing Light to me seems really low, but it also is a way to stack Consecration. So you can get 2 Consecrations down between Consecrated Blade and Searing Light. It's a solid ability. I would really love for Blizzard to let us know what the actual proc rates of things are. So one of the things that I wanted to point out as well, guys, is there was a change to our mastery. Our mastery is now going to you're going to have less mastery going into 10.0.7. Another change that we have is Instrument of Retribution is now baseline on Ret. What this is when a party or raid member within 40 yards dies, you gain Avenging Wrath for 12 seconds. So this was the part of Retribution aura that gave us wings, and so now it's baseline on Ret. So this was one of the changes that to Ret aura that I think was a really good change to give us this baseline, and now Ret Paladins don't have to feel selfish for taking Ret aura. Ret aura now is a party-wide buff, and it's not just a buff for the Ret Paladin. But that's going to be it for me, guys. Thank you so much for sticking through this very long video. If you'd like to connect or talk Ret, you can hit me up in the comments down below. Please don't forget to subscribe, and if you like the video and the content, please give it a thumbs up. I would really appreciate that. If you'd like to connect on Twitter, Discord, I do have a Twitter and I do have a Discord. I will leave links to them down below. I also have a Twitch that I stream at. You can find me there. And as always, Ret Pumps.